Welcome to It's a Woman's World, where any and all topics are discussed from a woman's point of view. Here's Ali Naifani.
Welcome to the show. We are excited to bring you another episode of It's a Woman's World. And before we get started, I'd like to introduce my hosts. They are Nadia Jordana.
Hi.
Nadia. Hello. We have Junita Flowers.
Hello, Ali. Good to see you.
Hello. Great to see you. And Uma Jengai.
Hi, Ali. It's great to be here.
Well, it is so good to be back together again. How have you been?
Oh, it's good. It's spring is coming.
Yes,
it's just right around the corner, so
Yeah.
it's
Been
good.
a long time.
It is good to be back.
It is. Well, we have a show today. We're going to be talking about something that I think affects many people, and sometimes it's real hard to discuss. And that topic is depression.
Oh.
And I think what's interesting about what we'll be discussing with our guests today is how she dealt with her depression and incorporated art into some of that therapy that she went through. So I will introduce our guest, and we have Gail Speckmann with us. Hello, Gail.
Hello.
And Gail, you are a watercolor artist. You are also a writer and a poet.
Yes.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
All right.
And Gail, let me ask, you are such a creative person. Maybe you could take us back to and explain to us what some of the things you feel might have been catalysts to get you to a point where depression was an issue for you.
Well, I have been a creative person my whole life. I mean, very oriented towards the arts. And it wasn't actually until early adulthood that I started having some issues with depression. And I had several bouts of it, but they would always resolve themselves. And finally, I went through this depression just almost 11 years ago now. And it culminated, I believe, because I had too many irons in the fire, too many things going on. And I was I've led some tours abroad, and I led 2 back-to-back tours, so I was gone for almost a whole month. I physically became sick, and I had lost my voice, sort of metaphorically even, I guess. And I just started sinking deeper and deeper into depression after I returned. I was exhausted. We were having a lot of financial challenges at the time, and I was just overwhelmed. And my tendency is to be very outgoing and really enjoy all kinds of pursuits, and oftentimes taking on too much. And then I roll like to the cliff, and then I back off and I really cocoon. But this time it went into too much rumination, and apparently that is not uncommon for women particularly, that's how we sometimes handle depression, is by going inward, and then we kind of keep processing it and not finding a way out of it. And so I struggled with it. I was able to hide it, I guess. When you're in depression, that is something that is a natural tendency. You want to hide it and have a quiet time of healing. But the hiding it also leads to isolation.
That's true.
And I was able to do that partly because my work is more on the private side, so no one had to really know I was going through this. And a lot of my activities that I'm involved with during the year were not going on during the summer. And finally, it got to the point where I couldn't come out of it. I was afraid I would never come out of it. And I was kind of hearing some voices, and not in a literal sort of way, but I felt like I was getting messages, and it was getting very frightening.
So you say you were an artist even before the depression started?
Oh,
or
yes.
Is that the creativity in you made you come out from it?
No, actually in the book that I'm writing called Have Hope, Sharing the Journey from Depression and Suicide to a Healed Life. And I have been an artist my whole life. And I majored in art in college. I've been a professional artist. I've I've won international awards. I've been really involved in it. And this was all true beforehand, and I also don't want to, in the introduction to my book, I want to let people know that this wasn't like some sort of opening that came for me because of what happened. It was me returning to myself with a new perspective and a new compassion for other people and a desire to help in healing other people's wounds.
Well, as part of the process you went through, you have a poem that you're going to share with us. Would you like to do that now?
Sure, that'd be great. This poem is the last poem that I wrote before really sinking into the depression. And when I said I hear a voice, I have a poetic voice that comes through me. And I just write it down as it comes. And I've been involved in music for many, many years. And so I think I just have this framework that it just flows through. So this is the last thing I wrote before the voice stopped, the poetic voice. And I called it Life Path. It starts out with some hopefulness, and then you can feel it turning darker. I have stood and faced the sea, and every cell inside of me pulsated to its harmony. I have lifted face to rain, washed free of tears, of blood, of stain, and found strength to begin again. I have gazed into the sun and lost my sight of everyone. In its blaze of glory, I am undone. I have ventured on trails that are little known, in love supported and yet alone. My path to walk, my path to own.
Beautiful.
Very powerful.
Yeah, this is before getting into depression, right?
Yes. And I like that, in retrospect, when I read it, I feel like I'm already kind of creating the hope in it of reconnection. So it's not as dark as it might be.
No, it isn't.
No.
And depression is something that is tough to talk about, tough to be the person that's experiencing it.
Exactly.
And you were able to tap into your creative arts during that time. Can you walk us through some of the steps that you took to be able to transition from that place that felt so hopeless to being able to start getting back on track? Was it therapy? Was it your support group? What was the catalyst, and what were some of the steps you took?
Well, I did end up hospitalized after the suicide attempt, and I was in first for the requisite 72 hours and must have convinced them that I should be released. And then my family put me back in almost immediately because they didn't feel I was ready, and they were right. And so anyway, when I was in the hospital the second time, I had a woman who was my psychiatrist, and she was just great to work with. She was supportive and straightforward, and she worked really hard to find a therapist for me that she thought would work with me. She said I was kind of a little more unusual than some of her cases. So anyway, and she found a man who has worked a lot with creative sorts of people. And even though he is a man, he has a very, very nurturing side to him. And so he was just great at helping me re-emerge from where I was. And I also have a very loving family and supportive friends, and my sister would meet me every time before and after my therapy session. And she was afraid I was going to just be this muted version of myself forever, maybe. And one time we were talking after a session, and I said something funny, and we both started laughing, and we laughed, and she said, "You're back. You're going to come back." And so I have had a lot of good support. And as far as the writing completely dried up during that time period. And I tried to stay with the painting. It was very difficult. It was very hard.
Did your painting change during that time?
It went through two directions it would go. Sometimes it would be very cautious and very careful, which isn't really my style. I'm a pretty exuberant painter, and then every now and then I'd break out and I would do these sort of brightly colored slashing sort of paintings that seemed to be surrounded by darkness, but they were sort of bursting out. And so I look at those now in retrospect as being the healthier of the paintings. And then one time I did a painting that I just caked paint on it, and I've often thought I should now start removing some of that paint because it still is all these layers. And so that's something I might be doing.
That could be interesting.
It could be
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, that could. You know, when you were speaking, Gail, about the depression and the story with your sister, I think a misconception that I've heard about depression with women particularly is that, you know, just snap out of it. Like, just, you know, I'm sure, like, if we go for a walk and we go get some coffee, like, you'll be fine. What do you say to that when you hear that?
It's just such an impossible thing to do. And one of the things I really admired and appreciated about the loving, supportive people in my life was that they would remind me who I really am. And my sister would say, Gail, my friends always wanted to be around you because you were so funny. And I would kind of go, I was, you know? And everything that was positive and a strength of mine seemed, while I was in that depression, like it was false. Like, no, that wasn't really me. I'm this, you know, person that's deep in this hole. And I did write another poem one time that started out something like, don't send me your worried love that makes me feel less than I am. Send me the love that sees me, you know, as a strong person, even though I'm going through this dark valley right now.
So you mentioned that it's been about 11 years since you started your
Yes.
healing process. In your experience, once you start the healing process, is it pretty safe that you're going to be able to travel this journey and not have as many struggles with depression, or can depression, or did the depression resurface in your life? Did you have more struggles once the healing process was well underway?
Such a good question. I had, the first year was very tough. My depression had almost seemed more like a high anxiety than really depression. I said sometimes it would feel like, it looks like I can't move, but it's because I feel like I'm being pulled in 100 different directions. And so I'm just locked down. And so anyway, when I finally did go off the medication at the strong urging of my therapist, he said, it's gotten to the point where it's working against you now, because I wasn't really coming back to myself. And then after I went off the medication, I came back so quickly. It was almost shocking, and I was afraid. I kind of just wanted to pretend that hadn't happened. And but then as time went along, I realized, oh, I'm a writer. I think maybe I'm supposed to be writing about this. But I was afraid to put it out there because I thought, what if I do that and then I go into a deep depression again? And so now I feel like I waited, you know, longer than I meant to, but a very safe 11 years, and I have not had any trouble with depression since then.
I'm so glad to hear that. And you have a second poem you wanted to share with us. Would you like to do that?
That would be great. This is really interesting to me how this came about. As I said, I didn't hear that poetic voice coming through me for probably about 3 months before the suicide attempt, and then I didn't hear it for about 1.5 years afterwards. And we were in Florida visiting my in-laws, and we'd collected all these broken seashells, and I had them all spread out, and I just was so happy. And I could feel that there was like the ice was breaking. I could feel like it was becoming like a flow of ice, and I'd catch little phrases coming through. And then as I went to bed that night, I wrote poems all night long. I couldn't stop writing. It was like the dam had burst. And so this is one of the poems that I wrote. I called it The Offering. Open up your joyful, painful life. Celebrate and weep, release and keep. The tears like the stars, the smiles crescent moons, the Decembers, the Januaries, the Mays, and the Junes. A mix of the laughter, the love, and the strife, all the parts of your diamond-faceted life. Presented to God, a unique work of art, to the unified whole, your essential part.
I love diamond-faceted life. Oh, I like that. That's beautiful.
That is beautiful. So you think your poems helped you out to come out from depression? Because you said you also paint too, right?
Right.
So
right.
what do you think which contributed you to come out of the depression much faster? You think poems contribute?
I think once I could get back to my creative self, I felt like I had returned. And so, yes, that was a big part of it. And then I started really trying to find ways in which I could pay it forward, do things to help others. And I've done a number of things. I've worked with various groups. I've judged an art show for Artability, people in the Minnesota area recovering from depression and mental illness. Oh. And I've worked at the Lee Carlson Center up in Brooklyn Park, working with people, helping them with both writing and art. And I was the co-editor for a book called Fearless Women, Fearless Wisdom. And I helped bring out people's stories. It was the stories of their lives that were difficult and how they came out of it.
And so now you're writing a book about your journey.
It's pretty much written. I just need to gather it all up. But the longer I don't get it written, the more and more it becomes about healing. And I want the story to be not just for, well, really, I would have wanted to read this book when I was back in that state. But it's also for the loved ones who are trying to figure out, what is going on. It doesn't make sense on any kind of an objective level. For me, I had the added guilt of the fact that people would look at me and go, what does she have to be depressed about? But it didn't matter. I was there. And so, what I've really found is, I think partly I would feel like if I had to find the creativity myself, I would run dry. And now I have just a much deeper understanding that I'm the channel for it. And if I just keep myself clear, do my part to prepare whatever I need to do, it will come through.
And we've mentioned that mental illness and mental health can be a tough conversation to talk about, to bring up. And a lot of times people don't know what to say when they are, in relationship or have a loved one that is struggling with depression or some other type of loss. What are some things that your family or friends said that gave you hope or made you open up a little bit and didn't sort of make you feel even more shame or make you feel like I have to hide this more? What are things that people are thinking, hey, I have a friend, I'm not sure, but I want to talk. I don't know what to say to them. What are some things you could advise us to say?
Well, one of the best ones is the one I mentioned already, which is recognize that person as still being whole, and they're clouded over right now, and just support them in that. Don't try to pep them up exactly. I find for me, if I see music, or if I listen to music or see art or something that isn't like excessively happy and buoyant, but starts out in kind of a quieter place and then kind of leads you out. And that's kind of what I try to express a lot of times in my own art. But I would say also that one of the things that helped me was that when I would meet people that I didn't know beforehand, and I felt like, well, I know the people who knew me before all of this are standing by me and being supportive. But as an outsider, you can be supportive to someone going through that. And that meant a lot to me. It was like, oh, and I found this through my therapists partly, that I knew they genuinely liked me and wanted to help me and didn't just, and that was kudos to them that they were so genuine.
That was nice to hear, Gail, about how even someone who doesn't know you well can be helpful and give you support. And I think that's part of what a lot of people don't know, wouldn't you say?
I think so. I found that when I was hospitalized, I thought, you know, I started making friends very quickly. I think I had isolated myself so deeply that I was really hungry for connection. And I remembered thinking, I wonder if these will be my new friends now, if my old friends will not be there for me. And then I realized very quickly that they would. But it was, you know, I felt so open to the other people that were there, and it was kind of nice to just know that we can support each other even when we're deep in our own issues and troubles.
Depression just seems, it just robs people of such a quality of life. And I was just reading an article in the paper, and it was a young woman. She was a teacher, and she was generally a bubbly, happy person. And it got to a point when the depression was lingering for so long.
Yes.
She felt people didn't want to hear about it anymore. So it sort of encouraged her to isolate herself even more, because she felt, well, it's not going away. People don't want to hear about these troubles anymore. So it just breaks my heart that's even something that people have to deal with. But I just want to say I'm so glad that you were able to have the support system,
Yes, thank you.
and the therapist, the hospital staff, your family that was able to help you work through this process, and you were able to get to the other side. That's a huge feat. So
That is.
I'm so happy for you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I know how very, very blessed I was to have that. And, you know, and they were
I
so
agree.
nurturing, you know, and really, I don't think too many people would ever want to stay in that
Definitely.
state. And I know that was part of my suicide attempt. Was I thought, I can't live like this. But I mistakenly took it that I had to die. And, you know, I did go for help after making the suicide attempt. And, but I
think the
thought,
key is
my life has
asking.
changed.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's changed for the better.
That's wonderful to hear
So,
that. But as you were saying, you know, Nadia, just think about that a lot. That it reach for help and
Ask for help.
Exactly.
What you know, it seems like though when you are in the midst of depression, or people that I've encountered with depression, it that's what you want to just go and just say to them, we'll help you, we'll get you that help. And
Exactly.
it doesn't seem that easy. When you say brave, do you think that is what is it something that, you know, how do you break that mold?
Yes,
And-
exactly. I am
Well,
feeling this, I'm experiencing this. How
You
do
know, I went down fighting. I was still doing yoga. I felt like I was painting with my own blood. I wasn't, but you know, I really was fighting it so much. And maybe in retrospect, I just should have been a little kinder to myself instead of fighting so hard.
That's true.
But also through that fighting of it, I was going for help. I really tried to get help. I with people that were close to me, they knew what was going on. Although a lot of people that were close to me didn't, but I had a select group. And it just, you know, it's just such a challenge trying to figure out, you know, how to, how to break free of it. And so.
I
Sometimes
think we have to just continue talking about it so that people realize there's not a stigma, there's not
Exactly.
people judging you. That's the only way people are going to be able to come out of that,
Right.
because
Come out.
Right.
when you're in that moment, everything seems
Oh,
hopeless.
you were so
And it's-
vulnerable
Yeah.
at that
So
point.
it's, I think, just kind of generally as a society, we have to continue to talk about it, be open to learn and support people on their terms. Because when you're there, you may not know how to ask for help.
Oh,
You may feel
that's
shame
right.
asking
Exactly.
for help. I just think there's so many different things. And so you telling your story, writing a book,
Yes,
and then
writing
supporting
poems. Yep.
organizations where people are, you know, newly recovering or they're still experiencing it. That's just another layer that's going to help make it a little
Exactly.
bit easier.
Yeah, well said. I think that,
And it really, you know, is one of the reasons why I'm speaking about it and writing the book, is that I know how hidden I wanted to be when I was in it. And I could very easily have never told anyone but the closest people to me. But I decided that was part of my illness, was this feeling of shame and just that I had to keep it hidden. And I think that that's one of the largest reasons why I don't expect I will ever go through anything like that again.
Good for you.
That
Come
is
back
right.
stronger.
That's really powerful to hear that, though. That is really. And so, Gail, I know you have one more poem you're going to share with us, and we'd love to hear that.
Thank you. My son was home with us in January. He was in a bad car accident. He's doing very well, but he was home with us healing. And I couldn't find some things. You know, everything was a little, everything was a little discombobulated. And I was looking for something, and I could hear myself going, I've been down this road before. And I knew that if I had been in a depressed state, that I would beat myself up over it. And instead, I felt a poem coming. And I thought, I got to write this down. I don't care about what I was looking for. So here it is. It's called Bless It All. I've been down this road before, still going to travel it some more. Going to learn its length, going to learn its breadth. It cannot even end in death. I'll catch each wave along the way, learn to trust both night and day. As the tides rise up and fall, gonna learn to bless it all. Gonna greet each season's shining rise, gonna learn to say all the hard goodbyes, befriending time with its fleeting pace, gonna make my peace, gonna feel its grace, find eternity in a grain of sand, embrace the humble, extol the grand, gonna love the great, gonna love the small, gonna learn to bless it all. Gonna live in my own given skin, gonna love the world I'm living in, seek for truth in every choice, sing out loud in my own voice, gonna go and lend that helping hand, follow the lead of love's command, find the strength to stand up tall, gonna learn to bless it all. Trust the wings that take me high, to explore the open sky, trust the plunge that drops me low, so that my roots may stronger grow. Weave dark and light into a whole, bring forth diamonds out of coal. Trust the Spirit's loving call, gonna learn to bless it all.
Oh, that is great.
Beautifully done.
Yeah.
Oh, Gail, that was amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we thank you so much for coming on and talking about a very sensitive, difficult, but you've left us in a spirit of uplifting hope, and I hope people who are watching us out there, will take these messages. And I think, just like you said, Janita, it's about talking more about it and really.
That
Right,
helps
just
other people. Yep.
not hiding it and bringing it out in the front. So,
Yes, thank you so much. It was really my joy to be able to share this with you.
all right. Well, it was great to see you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
It happened so fast.
It did. It sure did. Well, we thank you for being with us today on It's a Woman's World, and we hope to see you next time.